Hi, my name is Jolie, and it's a good thing I did not plan on winning Mother of the Year anytime soon because reasons.
Hey, it's Emma. I'm reporting to you from my bed because it's really cozy and we can't see each other in real life. You can't
I
see us
know.
pouting, but we're pouting. It's like when we're able to see each other in real life, it's like the lack of seeing other people and like hugging your friends and stuff. I feel like I'm gonna feel weird about it. Don't touch
I feel
me.
like I'm just gonna be like a golden retriever that hasn't been outside in a really long time. Like, person, please talk. Like I'm not gonna be able to form sentences properly. It's just gonna be out of control. I'm already a little bit like that, and I realized it because I ordered plants from a local nursery. The person forgot one of my items, so he had to like knock on the door and
Like, oh
hand
my
it to
God, I
me.
guess.
And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, thank you so much for bringing this to me. Oh, Jesus Christ. And you could tell that he was a little desperate too. Like, he was like,
You
just want
need
to make sure you
interaction.
got it. Make sure you got your pilea. You're welcome. Have a great day, okay? Oh, God. So pathetic.
I know.
I'm so lonely.
I
Except I'm
know, right?
surrounded by people at all times. It's so weird.
I know, right before we started recording, Benny was like sitting on the ground in the kitchen. And I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, I'm so bored. I was like,
Like,
same, dude.
yeah, feels.
Right?
Yeah. Ripley actually cried the other day because she was like, I don't get to see anybody. And I was like, I know it fucking sucks.
Right? This is going to do something to them.
I try to rationalize the experience by saying there are lots of children who are in much worse experiences
Hmm.
right now. But it's still like, it's damaging. It's
Hmm.
hurtful.
Yeah, we had to explain to Nori about like the free lunches at school and how some people without having to go to school don't have any food. And like, because she was complaining about food and like she wanted something. I'm like, well, we're not just going to go to the store, to get that one thing. 'Cause it's like a virus and, all
Yeah,
that
we can't
stuff.
just go out to get whatever, so you need to like reserve what you have.
Exactly. Well, and we've also been like rationing berries because the kids want to eat so many berries. It's just like, holy shit. Like, you can't eat this whole pint right now. Like, you can have two berries, two berries
Right?
each. But yeah, we had
Ripley
to
likes to
explain that.
put all of the raspberries on her fingers, and I'm like, no, you can have one hand of raspberries.
Yeah, 10 is too many. It's like $6 a carton.
Can't.
Out of here.
Yeah, or even like Ripley just wants to eat shit all day because
Nori
she's
too.
fucking bored and she's growing, so it's like the double whammy. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, can't just constantly eat out of
Mm-hmm.
the fucking pantry. You're killing me.
Mm-hmm. We stopped letting the kids, I mean, not intentionally, but like, I don't know why. Like, maybe I've just been like distracted or life is like so different. I haven't been like feeding them as much as I should be. That sounds like horrible, but they've been eating their dinners
Yeah.
because I'm not like letting them snack all day long, or I'm not like offering snacks all day long. But now at dinner time, like they eat everything. I'm just like,
Because they're fucking
whoa. Yeah,
hungry.
because they're hungry.
I'm so hungry, mama.
Like, this is fine. But seriously,
Sir,
it's
can
like
I have another?
they shouldn't be eating like cereal bars like 30 minutes before dinner or like,
No.
just eating snacks all day long.
And that's what I said to Ripley too. I was like, dude, you can't just eat because you're bored. Like, I get it, but like, we're gonna be here for a while.
Mm-hmm. You
Like,
trying to go to the grocery store, girl? I don't think so.
yeah, if you want to have food the whole time, you can stop eating every second of the day because that's just bonkers. It's too many cereal bars. And I feel like my anxiety is through the roof, which feels weird because I'm not actually doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like I have no real reason to have anxiety. I just do.
I feel
Like
you.
my normal state of being is just an anxious mess lately.
I feel you. I've been drinking like every day, and that's not normal for me.
So I talked to Bryce and I was like, "Man, I need to develop some sort of like wine enthusiasm again
Do
because
it.
this is just ridiculous." And
It's
he was like, "We have
healthy.
all this wine and I just haven't. I don't know why.
Oh
I
my
just
God,
I'm
do
so
it.
used to not drinking."
Do it. I was feeling bad
Yeah,
about it at first. So then I saw a meme
fuck
today
it.
that was like, quarantine taught me you don't have to have fun to have alcohol. I was like, yes.
That's a very
I'm
I feel
there.
like a lot of alcoholics have already learned that.
Well, I'm just learning it now. Yeah, my therapist was like, oh my God, everybody's going to come out of here like an alcoholic.
I actually had a comment on one of my YouTube videos that I just saw that was the most depressing thing ever. So I have a YouTube video called Uncommon Signs of Depression. Someone commented like, it was already bad enough when I was pushing people away and I actually got to get out of my house. This quarantine is literally going to kill me.
Oh God.
Like, Jesus Christ, you're right. There are going to be a lot of people who do not make it through this.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Not because of like COVID, because that's bad enough, but because like their depression is not going to allow them to.
Mm-hmm. Sad.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to come up with just the best segue, and it's so inappropriate and rude.
No, about them being ghosts.
I'm not gonna say it, but that's what it was.
That's bad.
That's horrific. But I can't be serious about anything that makes me feel feelings because I don't enjoy it.
Mm-mm. Feeling.
I don't want to feel.
Oh.
That's why I need to start drinking.
Yeah, where's your wine, dude? Look at I have a cocktail in my Harmony Montessori cup.
That looks like water. What is that?
Good. I'm glad that's what that looks like. It's a vodka soda. It's just vodka.
Oh, okay.
Key lime, LaCroix, and then like real lime in it.
Yeah, maybe I'll get a drink eventually.
Yeah, I'm like, be an alcoholic. Come on,
come on, join me. Nice over here. I mean, it's not nice, but it's something.
But I'm coping. I'm coping.
Everything's fine. Everything's just fine.
It is. I don't know. It's something. It's the quarantine, man. Like I made Bloody Marys the other day because I was like, okay, it's like 3:30 and I'm like super bored. Is it appropriate to drink yet? I'm like, no, it's not. And I'm like, wait, if I make Bloody Marys, it's appropriate. And it was.
Right, because that's like a meal.
Yeah, it was appropriate.
Put a sausage in that and call it like a whole damn like salad.
Ta-da!
Got some protein. You got lots of veggies.
They were great. I really love Bloody Marys.
Oh my god. So, do you believe in ghosts actually? Now that we're not talking about ghosts at all.
Yeah, good segue. Nothing beats my segue, like last week's segue. You did a good one.
That was a really good one.
Right? Like, I'm killing this.
Mine are just dark.
So, I mean, all these people are committing suicide. Anyway, let's talk
Probably
about
gonna be a lot of ghosts soon. All this death, everything sucks.
Oh my god.
I'm awful.
I think I believe in ghosts.
Do you have any like experiences, or do you know of anyone with experiences?
I take that back. I don't think I do believe in ghosts. I don't have any ghost experiences. Right before we started recording, Benny told me that he saw ghosts when he was like 12, or he said an age, I don't remember, but like a kid, and nobody believed him. Like he used to live on this like Christian like retreat thing, or briefly, like his parents went there, and like something walked by the door, like some kind of like Grim Reaper figure or something.
That's fucking horrifying.
Right? Do you believe in ghosts?
I have had experiences, but I don't believe that ghosts as we think of them exist. So I do believe that people see things that they can't explain. I do believe there are phenomena that we don't understand in the world, and that it is entirely possible that something is happening. Not that it's ghosts, but that like we're experiencing like something that we just haven't figured out yet. So I am really big into the theory that time overlaps, and I have been since I was like a little small child. And I could be entirely wrong or totally like misunderstanding like the concept of different dimensions, but I do believe that time overlaps, and that sometimes like what we experience that can't be explained by like hallucinations or other natural phenomenon that we understand could be explained by potentially just like things getting squishy.
Yeah. No, I get that for sure.
That being said, I am always willing to be wrong. Like that is actually one of my superpowers. I feel like if I had a superpower, it would be like my total willingness to be very wrong. And to change my mind about something. Like if I learn about something where I'm like, oh, I was like dead fucking wrong, then I will tell people. I'll be like, I used to believe this, but it's not true. And I'm going to tell you now. Like I don't cling too tightly to things that I believe, and I don't know if that's just like a kind of insecurity in myself, or if it's like
an openness. Yeah.
Probably like, oh, I'm a fucking idiot, so nobody should take me seriously.
Oh my
just
God.
in case I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Please don't listen to me ever.
I do that same shit. Like, I was just telling somebody, I was like, oh, like, they just had a nephew and he was born early at 38 weeks. And I was like, no, that's full term. Like, anything like 37 weeks is early term, and anything after that's full term. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, but I
Look
think,
it up before you actually trust me, but
yeah,
like, yes,
Google
I'm
it.
saying
Google
this and
it.
it's true. I mean, I always do that with people. I'm like, you should totally look that up though. Like, I will
Yeah.
tell you that I think it's true and that you should trust me, but also I think you should do your own research because,
Don't
like,
quote
honest to
me.
God, who's going around looking at me like, yeah, she's gonna lead me in the right direction? You need to do your own work. I'm not responsible for anyone but myself, and I am just like hanging on by a thread.
That's like a disclaimer for this whole podcast.
Exactly. Like, I am not a professional. Please do not listen to me. Listen to the podcast, but don't listen to me. Just like take it as entertainment, and that is it.
Right? Uh,
I describe myself as a jack of all trades, and I know that the follow up to that is master of none. But I feel like there is a third part of that quote that people don't ever remember, which is something like, "But it's like better than being stupid in everything else, but one thing." So that's how I feel about myself. I'm like, I got a little bit of a lot of things. I'm
mm-hmm.
not gonna be able to do any of them really proficiently, but I have much experience in a lot of things.
Yeah. No, I feel you. When I read your bio, I was like, what the hell? That's who I am. Ex
I'm
dancer.
serious, like just copy it.
This is word for word the same thing.
Like, no, just like what she said.
Yeah. Same. Same, but different.
Same. So you don't believe in ghosts. You haven't really had any experiences. Benny has, but that does
Mhm.
not count. Would you consider yourself like really willing to believe in that kind of stuff?
I don't know. It scares me.
It's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, it scares me.
Yeah, and I feel like because we are so immersed in a culture that believes in ghosts, it's really impossible to not believe it at all, or to not like have
Yeah.
some leanings to try to like discover something that might be true about it.
Yeah, it's like our culture believes in it, and like, I don't know. Like, I feel like if I saw something that seemed like a ghost, because I'm so scared, I would convince myself that I didn't see a ghost, like that it had to be some other thing, or I was tired, or I would like smoke too much weed, or I don't know.
It's interesting that you say all of that because that's pretty much what people don't do.
Really?
Like most people will take it at face value and say, I saw something, it happened, I know it totally happened, and it was paranormal.
No, because that scares me too much.
Yeah, most people, even if it scares them, they'll lean into it real hard
Yeah, I
because
mean,
of
maybe I'll
their
have to see one to
persistent
see what
beliefs.
happens, but.
Oh, God.
Woo!
Oh, no, I believe. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of ghosts before we get into all of the other stuff,
Okay.
because it's just good to have like a baseline of what we're talking about. All cultures have folklore or belief systems that include ghosts in some form or fashion, which I find very interesting. It's not like a Western idea that other people adopted. It's like literally every single culture believes in ghosts in some way, or like spirits, disembodied spirits.
Yeah.
Like whether it's like what we consider ghosts, like a person who died and then is like kind of just echoing
Yeah, like in
whatever they used to
limbo.
do,
Yeah.
or if it's like a disembodied spirit that was never a person that like comes to fuck with people or to like help them in some way. In folklore, a ghost, sometimes known as an apparition, haunt, phantom, poltergeist, shade, specter, spirit, spook, wraith, revenant, is the soul or spirit of a dead person or animal that can appear to the living. In ghost lore, descriptions of ghosts vary widely from an invisible presence to translucent or barely visible wispy shapes to realistic lifelike forms. So they can be like nothing, or they
Yeah.
can be a lot of things, which I find very fascinating too, because that's like, it's so much room for error on the ghost
Mhm.
part. The deliberate attempt to contact the spirit of a deceased person is known as necromancy, or in spiritism as a seance.
Mm.
The belief in the existence of an afterlife, as well as manifestations of the spirit of the dead, is widespread, dating back to animism or ancestor worship in pre-literate cultures. Certain religious practices, funeral rites, exorcisms, and some practices of spiritualism and ritual magic are specifically designed to rest the spirits of the dead. They're generally described as solitary, but there have been reports of seeing like full battle scenes of ghosts.
Crazy.
I
Like in
would
Frozen
not.
2.
I've never seen Frozen 2. Ripley doesn't want to watch it with me
Right?
yet, and I've heard that it's better than the first. I'm super pissed about it. Like,
Oh,
come
it's
on.
so good.
Okay, so according to a 2009 study by the Pew Research Center, 18% of Americans say that they have seen a ghost.
That's less than I would have guessed.
It's less than you would have guessed?
Yeah, I feel
Well,
like,
more
you
people
know.
believe in ghosts.
Okay, but
40% of people
18%
believe in
seen
ghosts.
them.
Less people have seen them.
Okay.
In many cultures, malignant, restless ghosts are distinguished from the more benign spirits involved in ancestor worship. So, now we're going to get into the ancient beliefs that shaped our understanding of ghosts. And when I say our, I mean Westerners, because I can't speak for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
There are many references to ghosts in Mesopotamian religions, the religions of Sumer, Babylon, Assyria, and early states of Mesopotamia. Traces of these beliefs survived in the later Abrahamic religions that came to dominate the region. So they're thought to be created at the time of death, but most of the time, these people wouldn't just hang out unless, like, you weren't doing their funeral rites properly. Like, if you did everything that you were supposed to do, they would essentially be in the afterlife, like, doing the same shit that they did on Earth. You weren't going to have a ghost haunt you unless you fucked up.
Yeah.
There was widespread belief in ghosts in ancient Egyptian culture. The Hebrew Bible contains a few references to ghosts associating spiritism with forbidden occult activities. So the Bible is actually where you start to see the belief in ghosts start to change from being like, oh, this is just a normal thing, like we have ancestors, and some of them come back because we fuck up, or some of them are going to teach us a lesson, or some of them were bad people in life, and that's why they come back to like fuck with us.
Mm-hmm.
But this is when you see them actually saying like, oh no, that's not good. Like, this is bad shit, evil shit. Over a period of more than 2,500 years, Egyptian beliefs about the nature of the afterlife evolved constantly. Many of these beliefs were recorded in hieroglyph inscriptions, papyrus scrolls, and tomb paintings, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead compiles some of the beliefs from different periods of that ancient history. And a lot of people, like, when you're saying ghosts don't exist, they'll quote the Book of the Dead to you, or they'll say, well, haven't you read the Book of the Dead? You're like, who wrote that, bitch? People wrote it. I don't understand. Why? In Greece, ghosts were pretty commonly written about too. They appeared in Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, but they were described as more of a babbling nuisance.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would help people, but like not really. They just kind of showed up, said some nonsense, and then disappeared. By 5th century BC, classical Greek ghosts had become haunting, frightening, and could work to do either good or evil purposes. So this is when they started to develop their own like a sense of purpose outside of just like hanging out and being like blah 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 blah. Okay,
Yeah.
bye.
Like, I'm here to fuck shit up.
Now it's personal. You also see here that they're starting to believe that if you don't properly bury a body, that the spirit will just attach itself to the earth until it is properly buried. And a celebrated account of a haunted house from the ancient classical world is given by Pliny the Younger in 50 AD. Pliny describes the haunting of a house in Athens, which is bought by the Stoic philosopher Athenodorus, who lived about 100 years before Pliny. So he bought the house. He knew that the house was haunted, and this is why he bought it.
Because it was haunted?
Because it was haunted. Like, nobody else was purchasing this house because, like, honest to God, what kind of white idiot, like, moves into a haunted house? Like, no, I'll fix it. But he moved in, and he was a writer, so he had his people, like, move his desk and his couch and everything into the reportedly most haunted room, and he just waited. And then he started hearing like the rattling of chains, and he was like, oh shit, just calm down, it's happening, it's all happening. Oh my god, yes. And then the ghost came to him, and he like did one of these, like put his finger up like, no, wait, I'm writing something. And the ghost was like, all right, well,
the ghost waited?
The ghost waited a little bit and then like rattled his chains. He's like, fine. Like turns around, looks at him, and then the ghost like beckons him over to follow him. So he follows him into the garden where the ghost disappears. Then he has the city dig up the garden, they find the body, they give it a proper burial, and it is never seen again. So this was written as a series of 3 different haunting stories, which honest to God, like I think Pliny the Younger was just like, I just want to write some ghost stories to my friends.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fucking bored.
Yeah, scare some people.
yeah, like whatever, we're gonna like write some weird shit, just practicing. Like there was
Yeah.
no real message in it. It was just like it was a ghost story. It's like
Okay.
yeah, it's like a campfire story, except like
Yeah, that's fun.
for old philosophers. So generally speaking, during the Renaissance, people like stopped believing in a lot of this kind of stuff. And actually a big proponent of most of like the spiritual beliefs being the Catholic Church, people were like fully against the Catholic Church for a while. So a lot of Catholics thought that certain beliefs were about suppressing the Catholic belief system, when really it
Huh.
was just like, no, this is just what somebody believes. Don't make it
Yeah.
personal.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were taking a lot of shit personally, but to be fair, a lot of people were super against the Catholic Church as like an institution, which
Oh.
I think is fascinating too. And
Yeah, that
that
is
all kind of started
fascinating.
around the Renaissance. Yeah.
What were
So they
they
were so
into?
powerful.
What were they into?
I think it was just a matter of like people getting some sort of awareness of like the power structure and
Yeah.
being like, you guys are just fucking with us.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently they were struggling for a really long time for like a lot of the intellects at the time were just like, no, this is bullshit. Like they were super against witchcraft too, and like the intellects were super like against witchcraft, and the Catholic Church considered them to be like, even though they were specifically saying like, hey, you shouldn't punish people for something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church fully believed that that was like an attack on them. Like it was both sides just like making
Yeah.
problems. It's just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I might be like fully misunderstanding that, but that is like, that's essentially what I read, is that like lots of people fucking hated the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church made everything personal when it did not need to be.
Yeah, I believe it.
So because belief in spirits, it's just like it wasn't in vogue. Like nobody was talking about it for a really long time. But then the spiritualism movement of the Victorian era kind of took over, where you see like my girl Helena Blavatsky
Yeah, girl.
fucking shit up, making things up, getting lots of money. Girls gotta eat. No, I fucking hate that bitch. She's awful. The spiritualism movement postulates a belief in God, but it also postulates a belief in the unseen realm. And this is where you start to see like seances come into fashion, and you start to see people acting as mediums. You start to see like table tilting and ghost photography, like all of that started to come into fashion. And while there were a lot of notable people being like, yeah, none of this is real, these are charlatans, it was kind of the only job that women could have at the time.
Oh.
So most of the practitioners were women.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the mediums. It was like the only thing that women could do where they could like actually be powerful and run their own business.
Yeah. Like I see spirits.
So,
I know how to connect. Hire me.
right, like, you know, I'm going to tilt this table and tell you whether or not your uncle hates you. As much as I'm like, okay, you capitalized on people's grief
Yeah.
and their suffering, I'm also like, well, what else are you going to do?
Mhm.
There's literally no other options. But spiritualism, like, really leaned hard into the idea that ghosts were real and created, like, a pseudoscience around it. So a lot of what we think of as, like, ghostly phenomena and
Mhm.
ghostly science, like a lot of the shit that you see on TV is based directly off of spiritualism. Like ectoplasm as a concept,
Yeah.
not really a thing. Like it might be a thing in some other aspect of science, but it is not a thing that is like a measurable thing that you can measure, from measurable thing that you can measure. I am really great at speech stuff. It's not something that happens
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
Like it's not something that just exists. And when people say that they find ectoplasm, it's either faked or it's a circumstance that they just don't understand. That's
Mhm.
easily explained by something else. It's the same as like, oh my god, have you ever heard about the time it rained meat in Kentucky?
I've never heard about the time it rained meat in Kentucky.
So people assumed that it was some sort of like crazy like rip in the dimensional structure of our universe, and like this shit just poured out from some unforeseen force. But it was
What the fuck?
vultures that were disturbed before they got to finish their meal, so vultures puke to make themselves lighter. There's just a lot of vultures that puked.
That's really disgusting.
It's horrifying. Like, I'm sure the experience of that would have haunted anybody, but the minute you hear it's vultures, you should be like, yeah, no, it's
There was
It's
just meat
gross,
falling
but
from
that's
the
what happened.
sky.
It was, yeah, it was just like chunks of meat that rained down.
That's a lot of vultures, though.
But vultures like fly, or they hover over carrion in large packs in like huge groups. So if one of them is disturbed and their natural impulse is to lighten the load by, you know, vomiting,
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of vomit. Like if all of
Yeah.
them are disturbed at the same time by like
Yeah.
a dog
But
or a
nobody
person.
saw those vultures in the sky.
Well, I'm sure people just like looked out their window and were like, "What is happening? Don't go outside. It's raining meat."
Do you watch The Watchmen on HBO?
Yes. That's what it reminded me
When
of
they
actually when I
misflipped.
saw it. So it's not like The Watchmen in that a person didn't create it and it wasn't like literally a rift in the time space continuum.
It was just
It
vultures.
is like The Watchmen in that nobody understood what was happening, but it was explainable.
Yeah.
So yeah, the spiritualism is like where we get a lot of our ideas of what ghosts are. The scientific methods that most ghost hunters use are pretty much directly based on the science, and I put that so many fucking air quotes around what people found about the spirit and the afterlife. You know, the more I read about stuff like this, the more I'm just like, well, people just make shit up and then they just kind of like believe it. I don't understand how anyone does that, because if I make something up, I'm like, oh, but I just made this up. That's not
Or
real.
maybe if you start telling a bunch of people and they believe it, then maybe you'll believe it.
Are you saying that I should start a cult?
That's what I'm
Because
saying.
I'm down for it. So yeah, there was a lot of, and there still is a lot of money to be made in like ghost hunting and mediumship and psychic phenomenon.
Hmm.
So that is something to remember, that like there is a large influence of people who might, you know, want people to continue believing in ghosts and
Hmm.
have like worked really, really fucking hard to make it convincing,
Yeah.
including religion. Religion is like just as much a part of that as anything else. So now we're going to talk about the psychology of ghosts and kind of like why people, A, why they want to see them, and B, like the normal processes in the brain that kind of help to create prime experiences for like seeing a ghost or experiencing some sort of phenomenon that they can't explain any other way because they don't have the words for it.
Yeah.
So some metaphorical usages of the term ghost that I thought were really interesting is Nietzsche argued that people generally wear prudent masks in company, but that an alternative strategy for social interaction is to present oneself as an absence or as a social ghost. One reaches out for us, but gets no hold of us. There is also another person called Nick Harkaway, who considered that all people carry a host of ghosts in their head in the form of impressions of past acquaintances. So, like, the idea that you are a different person to every single person that you meet,
Yeah.
that's just like a phantom of you.
Hmm.
So,
That's
like, when they
interesting. That's
experience you
cool.
in memories or in, like, imagination, that you are a ghost then, which I think is really
Yeah,
fascinating
me
as a
too.
philosophical
I like that.
concept. There is also objects relation theory, which sees human personalities as formed by splitting off aspects of the person that he or she deems incompatible with, like, the social structure. And the idea is that those things that you've cut off, those ghost remnants of you, are going to come back when you're older and when you can't really fight them off and can't control yourself anymore.
So like the parts of you that you try not to show because they're like weird or
Socially
unlikable
unacceptable.
or whatever,
Yeah,
when you're old, you're just like, oh God, I'm just this person.
yeah.
Okay, I mean, I
I
get
think
that.
it,
I feel like you get old and then it's like no fucks. You're just like, yeah, I'm this person that does weird shit.
and then like it's like your previous self or the person that you could have been if you were honest with yourself comes back to haunt you. People take ghost shit to really interesting places, basically. All right, so now I'm going to talk about how our brain tries to process stimulus because that's like a giant part of it.
Okay.
Everybody knows that our brain is built to process the things that happen in our world and the things that happen to us, the things that we feel, like how we
Mm-hmm.
experience our body. All of that is processed by our brain. So people tend to think that this is like it's either real or it's not, and how I experience my body is just how everybody experiences their body. Everyone's brain works differently in how it processes information based on previous experiences, persistent beliefs, based on just like weird physical phenomenon that might not happen to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Like my synesthesia.
Yeah.
That like if I had never heard that anyone else had that, I 100% assumed that everybody felt like that. I was like, oh, this just happens to everybody. Like when they hear loud noises or like when they listen to music, your skin just like vibrates. It's just a thing.
Not a
I would have
thing.
never known.
Yeah.
Or there's the most recent thing is like people realizing that some people actually can imagine something, like they can
Oh
visualize
yeah,
something,
I
and
was
some people
reading about
cannot.
this. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
interesting.
So you just assume that everybody experiences life and their body and the world in the same way as you, but you don't realize that your brain is actively creating your
You
reality,
know, it's so
and not
crazy.
everybody shares that.
I think that Mateo's colorblind, and I think about that a lot, that like he isn't seeing
Yeah.
color. You know, I'm like, that's
So
weird.
he's experiencing it in a completely different way than you, and you'll never be able to
Yeah,
experience it
I
like
don't
him.
get it.
Yeah, there's one quote that I really love, that I actually have on my Facebook, I think, and it's something to the effect of like, you are master of your own world. Every man creates his own experiences. Everyone creates their own way of processing the things that they go through.
Hmm.
And like everyone's world is real because it's real to them.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of people just don't understand that. They're just like, no, it happened to me, so it's real. Real in what sense? It
Hmm.
happened to you, so it is real. It's not real to me.
Yeah.
And it's like people also confuse that with a sense of, we just have different opinions on the facts. It's like, no, there are facts that are the same for everybody across the board, but how you react to the stimulus and how you interpret it is
Hmm.
very real for you, and it won't be real for me.
Hmm.
So a lot of this is like just people not understanding that people's processing is so vastly different, but also that our brain has not evolved in the past 200,000 years much at all.
Crazy.
Yeah, so we're essentially like, other than getting taller and some like weird genetic quirks,
Yeah.
we haven't really evolved much. Our brain is still operating under the terms of like, you could be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger at any time. Always be wary of what's going on around you.
Yeah.
That's where we're coming from as a species.
So
But we have
weird.
like
Like,
TVs and shit.
why is it such a long time? Like, you'd think that,
Yeah. You would think that some like giant processes would change, but I guess it's entirely possible that we wouldn't be able to tell certain internal processes that have like finally shifted over time.
yeah.
But at the same time, like our fear instincts and the way that we process information is still so fucking far behind where we are technologically
Hmm.
that it fucks shit up for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of what our brain tries to do is to create order out of chaos. So it's trying to figure out like why we're here, what created us, are we in danger, and it's just trying to figure out what happens when we die. Like that is a pretty consistent thing that happens for literally every single human.
Yeah.
And it starts really early, and you know this because you have kids. Like they start asking questions about death way earlier than you think they will.
Yeah.
They start asking like what happens to you when you die. Like I know that there's something that animates me and that makes me feel conscious and
Hmm.
makes me feel like a separate entity from everyone else. Does that go away? So that's like the most common question that people have when
Yeah.
they figure out like, oh, I'm me and I'm separate, and then you're you and you're separate. What happens when the body dies?
Yeah. Where does that
And then
that person go? Or
right, does that end? Do I
yeah.
end? And like how do people answer that? Nobody wants to say, yeah, you die.
Yeah. Well, nobody really
You
knows
go
the
away
answer.
forever.
Nobody really
Yeah, so
knows
they
the
just say,
answer.
oh, no one knows the answer, or like, oh, you go to heaven where you continue to live.
I
The
don't
same
believe
thing
in
that we've been
heaven.
telling people for like thousands and thousands of years.
I don't believe in heaven.
I don't believe in anything. Like, but that doesn't make me feel powerless, and it doesn't make me feel weak. It actually makes me feel like it's such a rare gift to be given consciousness,
Hmm.
and that I should appreciate it for the length of time that I have it. And I don't find that that makes me any less respectful of other people. If anything, it makes me feel like I am put on the earth for such a short period of time that if I make other people's lives miserable, like what a shitty thing. What a shitty person am I? I get
Yeah.
this much time and this is what I choose to do with it.
Hmm.
People are always like, if you don't believe in God, then how are you like not gonna want to like kill people and rape? And it's like, because I just don't want to.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Like, I
it's
don't have
taking
to believe
more.
in God to not want to do that shit.
No, and I mean, in some ways, it's like you're taking more responsibility for the kind of person that you are, and it's
Because it's
like,
all me.
yeah, your life is in your hands, and like,
Hmm.
yeah, I feel that.
A few ways that we try to understand events, because this is really important, is anthropomorphism, which everyone usually just associates with us like talking to our dogs like people
Yeah,
and like interpreting their signals as like the same as we would interpret for another human.
yeah.
You can anthropomorphize literally anything. You can anthropomorphize a chair. I anthropomorphize very, very small objects that are like exact reconstructions of larger objects, like tiny little ketchup bottles. Oh my god, they're
You're
so
so
fucking cute. They make me want
cute.
to cry. That's ridiculous, and I'm aware that it's ridiculous, but I totally fucking do it because it's just so tiny. I feel like a giant holding this thing. Oh my god, I'm a weird person. Or like people will usually think that a demon is making them sick. It's like, no, your body is making you sick. Don't anthropomorphize the illness.
Yeah, if you're like projectile vomiting green like all across your room.
Yeah, I feel like that had some extenuating circumstances though that would have made it pretty obvious immediately that a demon was making her sick. This is just like, oh, I get a cold, a demon is trying to kill me. Or like,
I've
I
been
got
skinning.
cancer, a demon is trying to kill me. It's like, well, no, people get cancer. That's just a thing
Yeah.
that happens. It fucking sucks, but like don't make it spiritual. There's also specific things that happen in the brains of people who actually believe in this kind of stuff. There is a scientist that asked skeptics and believers to view simple animations of moving shapes while lying in a brain scanner. He found paranormal believers were more likely to see some kind of intention behind the movements of these random shapes. So they would sense some sort of intention, and also people, when they believe more of like the paranormal stuff, they are more likely to see faces in random noise. There were also similar situations where people would be played audio of noise. They wouldn't be told anything of it. Like some people would not be told anything, but the people who were told that it was taken from a place that was haunted
Oh,
or
they
believed
hear
to be
like fucked
haunted,
up stuff, right?
they'll like, ooh, I could hear him say, "Get out." It's like, no, you heard noise.
Oh
But
my God,
yeah,
but I like feel that. It's like if I was doing a test like that and they were like, this came from a mental hospital and it was just like sounds, I'd be like, the whole time listening to
the
it, I'd
person
be
is
scared.
suffering
I'd
forever.
be scared.
It's a normal process, and it's totally like it's important for me to continue to say that that is a completely normal and evolutionarily like advantageous thing for you to be able to do, because it is more important for you to be able to suss out danger if it exists than to always be right.
Yeah.
Like if you were to go into the woods and you heard a rustling and you immediately were like, ah, it's just a rustling, and then you got eaten by a bear,
Yeah.
that would probably be a bad day for you.
Yeah. I feel like, oh, I hear wrestling. I probably should like leave the woods.
Right. So there is some level of inhibition that we practice as more like modern humans, and I put that in quotes too. But believers in the paranormal are suggested to have less cognitive inhibition, which will basically allow you to look at an unwanted thought or something that maybe has other, rational explanations and be like, no, I don't need to believe in that because it's probably not true. And I think it's really important to say that nobody is immune to this kind of shit because anyone can be primed to believe that they're going to experience something. Okay, so I've got just a couple more things to talk about with the psychology of it, and one of them is super short. It's called The Ghost in the Machine. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have.
Have you?
Isn't that an anime?
That is an anime. It was first referenced in the 1949 work, The Concept of Mind, as a criticism of Descartes and his theory that the mind, as like a spiritual mind, was different from the brain and the body. The mind would continue off somewhere else. Yeah, so Gilbert Ryle coined the term in his 1949 The Concept of Mind. Ryle referred to this idea as the ghost in the machine.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Now I want to talk about why humans enjoy fear, because that's a big part of this too, I think. So we all know about flight, fright, and freeze is the third one that people have now started adding because a lot of people, their response to fear is to just freeze in place. The amygdala causes this. So the amygdala is essentially like the action and the emotion center of your brain, and the prefrontal cortex is the part that's like, can we not panic? Symptoms of the fear response include palm sweating, pupils dilating, heart rate increasing, breath speeds up, muscles tense, attention focuses. Dopamine and adrenaline is emitted from the brain to prepare you for action. This is the exact same response that you get to excitement. People enjoy feeling fear through threat simulation. So they enjoy the feeling of relief that comes from being scared, which is why a lot of people enjoy horror movies and ghost hunters and shit like that. They really love the feeling of that sensation of like, oh, we're safe. I love horror movies. I don't know if you do.
I do too. I love horror movies, but I don't like haunted houses.
I don't like people in my face. I'm very like
I don't
boundary
like
oriented with like my space. Like if someone's not approaching me like kindly, I just don't like it. So that's the part that I hate the most.
Yeah, I don't like haunted houses. I'm like, gross. Don't touch me.
So there is some suggestion that people who enjoy this kind of threat simulation desire intellectual and emotional stimulation. So people who are looking for that high sensation in their life. Some people also suggest that involvement in horror media is a form of benign masochism. There's like a sense of paradoxical pleasure in things like this. It's the same reason that people do extreme sports, or it's the same reason that people get into foods that other people don't like. It's not like you like it immediately.
Yeah, like eating like poisoned fish or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like you like it immediately. You like actually have to work your way into it, but there's a pleasure in being able to like tolerate the hotness of like the hottest chili pepper. The advantage is to open up beneficial regions in the space of local experiences that are closed off by default by innate fears and cautions. So you're essentially making yourself like impervious to fear. That's kind of how your body reacts to it. People get to experience strong, predominantly negative emotions within a safe context, and that really appeals to a lot of people, especially when our brain still functions as everything's hostile. We're looking for meaning in everything. Everything's scary. So, like, I'm going to experience fear in a really, like, safe context and feel like I can deal with everything else. Enthusiastic horror use and supernatural horror use were both associated with higher paranormal beliefs. It's also associated with higher levels of intellect and imagination. So people with higher intellectual and imagination, personality predictors, usually have a tendency and a proclivity for imaginative activity, including cognitive exploration and intellectual stimulation. These people are usually like looking for things. And I think that makes a big difference in how you approach like stuff like the supernatural. If you're looking for something, you're probably going to find it. All right, now we're going to go on to what actually causes hauntings, because as most people understand it, hauntings are actually real. Scientifically, we can actually explain it, but like the effects of what people consider hauntings actually do happen. The overwhelming consensus of scientists is like ghosts aren't real. But people experience...
What about when like shit gets thrown around people's houses and stuff?
I couldn't find as many studies on things like that. Most of the time, things are debunked pretty easily. So I looked for like a few of the videos that I've seen where things don't seem to be easily explained. And most of the time, it is like either the person who released the video actually has a history of creating like horror type media and an interest in it. Or sometimes it's just like, these people like really fucking love ghost shit. So they set up some, like they rig some stuff in their kitchen to like pull all the plates out. Like a lot of it has just been debunked that way, where it's like, just look at the personality type of the people releasing the media, look at the things that they've done before, and you could tell that it's probably a fake. And then some of it, like, there is no real explanation to it. If it was a hoax and people are just like excited that the video is out there, they're just like, yeah, I did that. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Or if it's like, if it's a thing that just hasn't been debunked yet, but has a natural explanation, or if something actually happened that we cannot explain. But even if it happened and we can't explain it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a ghost, Like, I feel like there are all sorts of things that we just don't understand. So I am going to talk about some stuff that kind of creates what we consider ghostly phenomenon. So one of them is faulty brain processing. So there are two processes involved in brain processing. Two processes involved in brain processing. There's top down.
Process.
Yeah, that's too many processings. Too many processes. So there's top down and bottom up. And bottom up happens when you're taking the input that's happening from the world and your brain creates like what it thinks is going on out of that. And top down is you looking at the information and being like, oh, but let's reason this out. Your brain applies what it knows.
To people with their bottoms up. Bottom up is ghost believers.
Bottom up, you're getting fucked. Top down, you wear a crown. No, but actually top-down processing does affect how people interpret ghosts and that they expect to have a ghost, so they see a ghost. So it kind of goes both ways.
Okay.
Like sometimes it's that your top-down processing isn't working, so you're not reasoning with your brain to be like, nah, dude, you're not getting this right. Come on. And sometimes it's like, I'm going to see a ghost and this is a scary house. And your brain's like, okay, it's a scary house. You're seeing ghosts. Have you ever seen the optical illusion of a mask turning? And when it turns around, you expect to see a concave face, but it's literally the exact same. Like your brain processes it in a way to just show you a regular face instead of like the concave version of a mask.
Oh, weird. And then it looks like it turns back.
Yeah. So that
trippy, dude.
So that's the mask illusion. And what's interesting about this illusion, and I'll actually post it on our blog because we actually have one now. What's interesting about this illusion, I know, we're like getting official at shit. So what's really interesting about this illusion is people with schizophrenia actually can't see it like that. So their brain doesn't correct
Oh, really?
the mask for them. Yeah, so that's also...
So they see the hollow mask.
Yeah, so they just see like the concave hollow mask, whereas like we will actually see the same face on both sides because our brain fixes it for us.
Yeah.
So normal perception is the optimal combination of both of these processes, but at any time, one of them could go haywire, and that's usually what happens when we have perceptual issues or when we see things that aren't there. So when examined by a fMRI, schizophrenic brains undergoing the BDII test, which is what you just saw, the mask turning,
yeah,
showed different connectivity patterns than non-schizophrenic brains. This means that the diseased brain has different strategies for minimizing visual errors. It overweights sensory evidence instead of the top-down processing, like the rational evidence. And people who see ghosts tend to have a similar thing that happens.
Okay, but time out. So like this is like maybe like a little bit off topic, but like, okay, a schizophrenic's brain doesn't correct things.
A schizophrenic brain still has the top-down processing, but it overweights the bottom-up processing.
This thing is spinning and it's like supposed to be hollow, but our brain's like, that's weird, let's make it right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe like they're seeing all this stuff and our brains are just making it right.
I mean,
so all these people that are seeing ghosts and we're like thinking they're full of shit because our brains are like working too well.
This goes back to the indigo thing
where I just like sound like a crazy person.
This goes back to the indigo thing. You might not be psychotic, you might be psychic.
I think you're right. I think that's actually what's happening here.
There are a couple of really amazing studies that have been done regarding creating a ghost feeling, or like the feeling of an apparition, the feeling of presence. And one of them is actually people were hooked up to a machine where they put their finger in and they moved their finger around and they could poke their back in any number of ways. So they did that for a while. Everything's fine. They're anticipating what's about to happen. And so their brain is like, yeah, we're going to get poked. We're fine. Everything's cool. This is normal. Then the scientists introduced a delay. So they would poke. The delay would happen. Then they would get poked. And what ended up happening is literally every single test subject felt at least one ghostly presence, and one person felt 4. And they were all taken as like direct threat. Like they felt extreme anxiety. They felt like that heightened fear response.
I can imagine that, feeling like that. Like, ooh, I wasn't expecting that tap, and now you're tapping me.
Yeah, so what they think happens with people who like feel things sometimes just out of nowhere, and they're not presenting with any sort of mental illness or neurological disorder, they think sometimes the kind of connecting point of two lobes of the brain, gets a little glitchy, and just experiences things as an external force instead of something that's actually like explainable. And of course, if like your brain is already hardwired to experience new things as scary and potential threats,
Yeah.
you're gonna experience that not as like, ooh, that's a weird feeling. You're gonna be like, run, it's a ghost. The other thing that's really interesting is there's this thing called inattentional blindness, which is where you focus on one thing to the detriment of literally every other thing that's going on. People who experience like ghosts or report feeling like presences or like experiencing things in their house being like slightly off usually have this more highly than people who don't experience like ghostly presence or things moving around their
Like they're
house.
only focusing on the presence.
Yeah.
So like the creaks in the floor, like
or they're seeing like, ooh, that window wasn't open when I like came in here. It's like, no, it absolutely was. You just didn't notice it. And now you are.
Yeah.
And now you can't notice anything else. Another really interesting thing is hallucinations, which are super common, and we talked about that actually already a couple of times, I think. And hallucinations access the same part of the brain that normal visual input accesses. So it's not like imagination. And people tend to think like, oh, you're just imagining it. It's like, no, that's not the same process that's happening. There are a lot of explanations around hallucinations that don't have anything to do with being mentally ill, but people are so tied into like, I'm not crazy, that they can't accept that people hallucinate a lot more than we think we do.
Huh.
One really interesting thing that I wanted to mention is Charles Bonnet syndrome, which is a syndrome where people who have limited or total blindness, but who were able to see previously, will experience vivid hallucinations to the point of like they can like literally see a person standing in front of them doing a dance, or they see people like there was one example of a person who saw people going up a set of stairs just over and over.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is horrible. I mean, it's interesting, but if that was your life, like, oh my God.
And basically what happens is the
It's
brain is
awful.
like, oh, that part of that part of us is just not getting a good workout. Let's get swole real quick. Like we haven't worked out in a while. Let's like really fucking do some shit. So it starts like overacting and creating signals that you're seeing things. And it's never people that you recognize. And I think one time it was like a person saw himself, but generally speaking, it's people that you don't recognize. It's usually not threatening. It's usually just kind of ridiculous. I think another interesting portion of it is people tend to see teeth and eyes as like really distorted, because the same part of your brain that is meant to see like teeth and eyes tends to be like hyperactive at that time. And it makes sense that it's teeth and eyes, because teeth and eyes tell you how someone's feeling, or it tells you if there's like a big scary saber-toothed tiger about to attack you.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually,
this is scarier to me than the ghosts. I'm like,
the fact that your brain can create this much like really realistic and intense, and these people know that they're hallucinating. That's the thing, like hallucinations,
because they're blind.
Yeah, hallucinations generally are thought of as something that you can't control, and you don't know that it's a hallucination. But these people are like, no, I'm not crazy. Please tell them I'm not crazy. I'm seeing this, but I know that it's not there. My great grandmother actually has these effects because she has macular degeneration, and my dog has macular degeneration. So and every once in a while he gets like really fucking panicked. And I'm wondering now if he has some version of this, like if he's seeing things and he's like, oh shit, this is not here. What's happening? What's happening?
There's teeth.
It's like, oh shit, no. There are also like a lot of like really common hallucinations, like bereavement hallucination, when you see a dead loved one and you can like communicate with them, or you like feel their presence. And it is like a very, it's a common thing. And it seems to help people in their processing of grief. So it's not like a bad thing at all. But it is also still a hallucination. You're not actually seeing your dead grandma and talking to her like I do. Like it makes you feel better. It makes you feel more connected. It helps your it helps your emotional state. So it's still useful. It's not a bad thing. It's just, not actually your grandma. Lilliputian hallucinations. We already talk about that? Seeing little people?
I don't think so.
So
no, we did
this
not.
This is a really common hallucination, apparently. Lilliputian hallucinations is when people report hallucinating little people, and usually like a lot of them. So this is supposedly, I didn't realize it was common, but this is where people think fairies and elves and like gnomes and stuff came from. Like people just like hallucinating little people.
That's so strange.
You can also have night terrors, which I have pretty regularly when I'm stressed out, usually. And
Yeah.
that's essentially when your body and your brain don't wake up at the same time. And because your
Yeah.
brain sends out hormones to keep your body from acting out everything that it's dreaming, you
Yeah.
essentially are paralyzed, and it's horrific. So already you're paralyzed, you start to get this anxiety. The anxiety amps up your amygdala and your fear response. You start to feel like there's a presence in the room. Every once in a while, because of the state of your anxiety, you can start to hallucinate and actually see things. And this is where I think a lot of people,
Yeah.
when they like wake up and they feel like they're completely alert and someone's like holding them down and they see a presence over them, it's like, I
Night
bet
terror.
if you went to a sleep study, you would realize that you had night terrors. And that's like the most common explanation for that kind of phenomenon, especially like waking up at any point and looking
Totally.
and seeing a dark figure or feeling like there's something in the room with you. It's usually night terrors. And because
Yeah.
night terrors can often be caused by sleep deprivation, I wanted to tell you a little bit about sleep deprivation because it's fucking horrific. Every 1 hour less sleep a night increases your risk for numerous kinds of cancer, so much so that nighttime shift work has been deemed as a carcinogen.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The
Like working the graveyard?
yeah, it has to be
Wow.
classified as a carcinogen. The protein beta amyloid builds up in the body as a result of sleep deprivation, and this is the same protein that builds up in people with dementia from Alzheimer's. That's
So even if
fascinating.
you're sleeping during the day and awake at night,
It
that
messes up your circadian rhythm, and like
yeah.
unless your body is actually like already kind of at that rhythm naturally, like people who are already like
Yeah.
really night owls, like they'll still get some of these effects, but generally
Well, that's
speaking,
actually a thing. I listened to a Modern Love podcast where there was a couple and they like fell in love or whatever, and one of them had some kind of condition where they were like slept all day and were up at night,
yeah.
and it like wasn't because of their job, it was like some kind of thing in their brain.
Yeah. I mean, I am
Yeah.
naturally a night owl, so much so that this quarantine has actually fucked with my sleep schedule. Like if I allow myself to, I'll stay up till like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'll be
Oh
just fine
god.
with it. Like I'll be totally awake the whole time.
That's what Benny's like too. Not me. I'm like, I'm going to bed.
I also have severe insomnia though at night, so like my sleep rhythms are just totally off, and they have been since I was a child. So like
Hmm.
that's a big portion of people who are more likely to experience paranormal phenomenon is people who are chronically sleep deprived.
Yeah, people were tired.
Yeah. So the other thing that I thought was interesting is more people are killed by drivers with sleep deprivation than drunk drivers. Yeah.
Wow.
Moderate sleep deprivation of 3 to 4 days causes hallucinations. It does not take long, and you can actually survive longer without food and water than you can without sleep.
I'm not the kind of person who can get like, 4 or 5 hours of sleep and be okay.
No. Well, supposedly nobody is. Like, these people might actually just be running themselves down over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I just can't. Like if I don't sleep well, like I feel like fucked up. Like not just like grumpy, like I feel weird in my head.
Yeah, so here's an interesting thing. In the psychotic state, the brain has trouble balancing the interpretation of sensory input and the generation of correct guesses for like what's happening with the things going on around you. This suggests that something similar may be happening in the sleep deprived state, leading to the susceptibility to hallucinate or guess something to be there or to be happening that's not actually happening. Like, and there are, like, even if you don't hallucinate, your visual processes when you're sleep deprived, and especially chronically sleep deprived, are just out of whack entirely. And people report like severe cognitive function issues with even mild
Well,
sleep
that's like mom
deprivation.
brain, right?
Yeah,
That's like what
that's
brain
exactly
is.
what mom brain is. Now we're going to talk about a couple of other things. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is electromagnetic fluctuations, which the science behind it was a little bit boring to me. So I didn't like really get into it, but some things that I did
This
right.
bored me.
Yeah, it totally bored me. It's not boring, it's like it would require way more effort than I was willing to put in. Transcranial magnetic current can cause the feeling of a presence in the room. Some researchers found that transcranial magnetic current can cause you to feel like you are being haunted currently. Like they can produce that effect.
Yeah, that's EMF. That's like on those shows where they have that like meter. They're like, we're detecting the EMF
By the
rays
way,
or like whatever shit,
literally everything puts
right?
off some electromagnetic frequencies, so There's no way to
Okay.
tell what's
You know
happening.
what I'm
Yeah,
talking
I do
about,
know what
right,
you're
though? With,
talking
like, that
about.
little metal square, and they're like, "Ooh."
Yeah,
They
scientists
have,
who
like,
actually
boom
work with
mics and
EMF
stuff.
meters are like, that's bullshit. It could be literally anything in that room.
Yeah,
Also, like
like
they
somebody's
always have
watch
like
or
cameras and like other devices. It's like literally everything
yeah,
puts off an electromagnetic frequency, especially if it's an electronic.
yeah.
So like you cannot count on that. So hauntings in houses are sometimes built in ways that affect the magnetic field. So some people report that they walk into one part of their house and they're like, "Oh, this is haunted. I don't feel good. Like I feel like very threatened right now." And that's usually because there is a magnetic field change, and
Yeah.
that can cause sleep disturbances, anxiety, that can cause you to feel cold, that can cause your hormones to fluctuate. Like, it causes a whole host of things.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
This is not boring.
It's not that it was boring, it's that the science was so specific that I didn't think that I was going to be able
Like,
to
too
actually,
in-depth,
yeah.
too heady.
So, another
Yeah,
thing that
I
people
get it.
don't realize is that carbon monoxide poisoning for some people can cause extremely vivid hallucinations and specifically feelings of dread. And it's colorless and odorless. I don't think people take it as seriously as it needs to be taken. Like, you can die pretty immediately. I actually
Yeah.
accidentally left one of my cars running in the closed garage once, and literally everyone in the house was like sick about an hour
Well, I
after.
believe it.
And
Yeah.
that's like in my house has a good amount of space, so it's kind of crazy that it didn't take that long.
Yeah.
There's also reports of people who accidentally left their cars running and then like went to work outside and killed their entire family, not knowing that they did
Oh
that.
my
Isn't that the worst thing you've
god.
ever heard?
Well, because it's, like, slow.
Because it's slow and people don't realize. They're just like, oh, I feel like shit. And then they just die.
They're like, "Oops, I died."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long either.
Oh my
So at
god.
levels of like a car, that's not going to take as long, obviously. But most people, if they have a carbon monoxide leak, it's like a little bit at a time, and it takes a while. So that process of you essentially losing oxygen to your blood cells will start depriving your brain, and then your brain starts to do like weird shit. So it's a pretty common cause
Yeah.
of hallucinations. And usually, if you get
Yeah,
the
then
gas leak,
suddenly you live in a haunted house.
yeah, that fucking sucks. Another thing that can happen in houses is mold toxicity. And people will often think of mold
Yeah.
toxicity as just getting like vaguely allergic reactions that get like really fucking bad, but you can also have extreme neurological
Yeah.
issues. Like your brain can swell,
Yeah.
you can hallucinate, you can. I actually have a friend who had a toxic mold issue in her house that her everything that she owned had to be thrown out and her house had to be torn down. Like it was that bad. And
Wow.
she's still
Yeah, mold
dealing
is no joke.
she's still dealing with the aftermath of it. But one thing that she said is like she couldn't sleep. Her mood was extremely unstable. She felt a constant feeling of dread. It's fucking crazy. And people don't ask you, like, so when's the last time you had your house checked for mold? They usually will like go into your like they'll do MRIs, which may or may not show your brain swelling at that point.
Uh-huh.
They're not going to find anything. Like usually it's kind of like last ditch effort. Like, we should probably like test your house just to see what's going on. Yeah, and most homes in the U.S. are actually built out of materials that really harbor mold. Like they're not made of like
Mm-hmm.
old
Yeah, I've heard
stone and
crazy
brick.
stories about, like, mold. I don't remember who told me, but I've been dealing with, like, my whole sinus thing, and somebody was saying that they had a sinus thing, and it turned out like there was just, like, black mold in between their walls in their bedroom, and it, like, gave them a sinus thing.
Oh my god, yeah, everybody should have their home tested for mold on a regular basis because that's some scary shit. There are a couple of different kinds of toxic mold. One of them is a hallucinogenic toxic mold, and one of them is more of a like allergic reaction kind of mold. One historic
Yeah.
example of people fucking going nuts might be the Salem witch trials. So it's thought that
Oh.
this kind of this ergot, this toxic mold that is a hallucinogen, was growing on the rye that they used in
Yeah.
their baking. They were eating it. They went fucking insane. This is a pretty good theory of what happens to make
Wow.
everybody fucking insane. But are you ready
Yeah.
for my favorite one? Because this is the one that I fucking
Mhm.
love. So the last
Can't
thing
wait.
is subsonic sounds. So pretty much everyone is familiar with decibels, and they
Yeah.
probably have seen the word hertz. So decibel is how
Mhm.
loud something is. Hertz are how many waves something has in a second. So if it's 1 hertz, it has 1 wave in a second. the wave will produce an air pressure change around items around in the environment, and that's how we hear sound. Resonance is a scientific principle in physics that works with electromagnetic acoustics and engineering mechanics. And how this is relevant is resonance affects literally everything. Your body resonates at a very specific oscillation. Everything in the world resonates in general. The earth has a resonance. And when sound comes at us in specific resonances, it can make us like sick, physically incredibly ill, and it can produce really weird effects. Like, think about it, your brain is essentially jelly. So if something is loud and at a weird frequency that doesn't resonate properly with your body, like, your eyeballs are going to vibrate. And that's something that literally happens with people when they're experiencing that kind of subsonic rumble. Infrasound has been utilized as a means of sonic warfare for physical human impact dating back to World War I. So we have known that this causes extreme psychological issues for a very long time. And I actually did listen with my canceling headphones, sound canceling headphones, to I think it was like I think I did a 16 or 17 hertz, probably 17 hertz sound, which is anything under 20 is usually where the cutoff for human hearing is. So anything under that is usually where you'll start to get some of the effects of infrasound. Honest to God, like, it was not pleasant. I didn't hallucinate. I didn't like feel my body vibrate or anything. I didn't like.
But it felt bad.
I didn't feel good at all. Like, I felt like this kind of like almost like a paranoia, like just that something bad was happening. And people will often utilize this sound in horror movies. And it is like the kind of like very low frequency that people will put into horror movies that makes you just feel like your guts drop. So imagine feeling that all the time. And there are people who live around, like, specifically people who live around wind turbines will experience feeling like general dread at all times and sometimes hallucinations. Infrasound is
because they're hearing that sound all the time. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's like it's a legitimate like effect that has been studied. And like, I mean, people are warned before they move around wind turbines. Like, it's that big.
Are they?
Yes.
Wow.
Like, they are absolutely told that there is like an infrasound and it might affect you because people go fucking crazy.
Yeah.
There are a couple of evolutionary reasons that things could make infrasounds, and one of them is predators stunning their prey. So tigers and lions actually can resonate at an infrasound level. And people have, and I've even experienced this, people have experienced the feeling that they cannot move when they hear a lion or a tiger roar.
Oh.
Yeah, so part of that could be like...
because like in their roar, they have that really low sound.
So you're just like, oh. Yeah, your entire body freezes up and you feel like you're like, so I heard it, I haven't heard this with I have an uncle who used to have big cats, but he had mountain lions, and I never experienced this with mountain lions. Like, it's scary, but it's not like, it doesn't give you that experience. But I did go to Lincoln Park Zoo when I lived in Chicago, and everyone was super excited because the lions were out, and it was kind of cold, so that's, rare. Like, they're usually not going to be out, like, basking. I started walking away, and I was a good, like, I want to say, like, maybe a quarter of a mile away. The lion roared. Everyone stopped. Nobody moved. Yeah, it was fucking terrifying. Yeah. And we are all in the context of being at a zoo where we know that the lion can't get out. But a lion's roar can actually travel really fucking far, and it has that infrasound. Another thing that commonly happens is sperm whales' clicks are not only incredibly loud, but they have that infrasonic sound. So when divers free dive with them, even if so sperm whales, if they know divers and if they've kind of been around them more than once, they know that their clicks are destructive. So they'll kind of try to tone it down as much as possible. But even the lowest of their clicks, with their big fucking heads and their, like, all the resonance that happens in their skulls, even their lowest clicks will paralyze people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So there's a report of one diver who wasn't...
really slow.
Whispered, I don't know what to do with you. You're too fragile. I have to do this to see. So there's one report of a diver who was diving with the sperm whales, and they're incredibly elusive. They're very difficult to be able to study because they avoid boats. They fucking avoid them. So you can't study them in normal ways. You actually do have to free dive with them so that they don't see you as a threat. So when they can actually
Yeah.
see the human, they will allow them to get near enough to be able to study. So there
That's
was
cool.
one, yeah, it's really, like, sperm whales are fucking incredible. But there's one instance where a person wasn't thinking, they put their hand out, the sperm whale clicked, and they couldn't feel their arm for like a really long time.
Yikes. Being underwater, that's like scary too. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah. So there was an experiment on infrasounds that involved several people, and it's essentially like they were put into a scenario where they were going to listen to some music. So they did the first round, they listened to the music. There was nothing added to it. It was just music. They took a little break. They came back. They listened to more music. But then there was a infrasound piped in. I think it was 17 hertz. It was piped in the whole time. People reported feeling nauseous. They reported feeling like there was a presence in the room with them. Nothing changed but that sound that they couldn't hear.
Wow.
Yeah, so there are a lot of people who believe that this is the cause of a lot of paranormal phenomenon.
That's like a really fucked up way to like torture your, somebody in your family. That sounds like horrible.
I'm getting ideas,
like so
but like specifically family, but like not my family. I would never do that to my family. But like if I wanted to do that to my family, like where could I find this sound?
If I wanted to torture somebody.
So actually one of the things that I found out about was in the Vietnam War, there was this psychological torture thing that happened where the U.S. Army would play ultrasonic frequencies, but also they would play, the Vietnamese believe that wandering ghosts exist, and if someone isn't properly buried and isn't given their last rites, then they'll wander the earth forever looking for their family. They played this ultrasonic sound, and then they played the typical traditional like funeral songs on top of that, and then they played audio of a man saying things like, I can't find you, I can't find my daughter, the Viet Cong should leave, I'm stuck here forever.
Oh my god.
Of course the Viet Cong were like, fuck you.
Yeah, right?
They're like, we see what you're doing, but also like, please stop.
You're really scaring us.
Yeah, like you're really scaring us, but like also this is fucked up, dude. No.
It is fucked up.
But yeah, so more than 4 in 10 Americans believe in ghosts, and like I said, 18% have actually seen a ghost, and we have a lot of reasons to believe that like it's just not fucking true. There's also like,
oh my god, I see something behind you.
It's cat magnets. So yeah, this is me being a bummer again. Ghosts probably aren't real, but your experiences are real, so isn't that enough?
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
it's
like
not
that.
enough. I want everyone to experience what I experience because I'm awesome and special.
Jolie is reality.
My reality is the reality.
That's it.
I just think humans are fucking cute. Like, honestly, this is like the cutest shit I've ever heard in my life. Like, I'm scared. There's something behind me.
I like thought I was going to come into recording this with you today and like be afraid. I was like, I'm going to get scared.
So what scares me the most is things that I know are real, 100%. Infrasonic sound fucking scares me. And if you ever listen to a recording, you'll realize that it's fucking terrifying, and for no reason. Like, you go into it being like, oh, this is probably going to make me feel weird. And then you're like, I fucking hate it. And then mold, normal processes in the brain. Like, that scares me. The brain is faulty.
Yeah, brains are crazy.
Yeah. What scares me the most is like the fact that I know that my brain has a very limited capacity for understanding things, and that at any point in time it could fuck up. That scares me.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about ghosts now? You're not scared, do you believe?
I'm not scared. No, I think I'm still in the same place.
Yeah. I mean, sorry I couldn't give you some good ghost stuff.
Yeah, I was expecting to hear like some fucked up stuff and be like, no, I can't go to bed.
I still love ghost stories, to be honest.
Yeah, ghost stories are cool. I like this whole time you're sharing, like I just can't stop thinking about those like episodes of shows where like people are like running around and screaming and like being locked in like creepy rooms. It's entertaining and it's scary, and it's like, okay, yeah, like maybe there's mold in my house, or maybe like the people that lived here like whatever years ago are here to like scare me. Which like both are scary things. One of them is more fun to share with your friends.
Yeah, and I think there's an entertainment value in any of the stuff that we talk about. Like, I think as long as you don't take it so seriously that you do crazy shit because of it, then yeah, I still love ghost stories. I want ghosts to be real. I really do. I just don't. I think that if they are, we probably don't see them.
Yeah, or
think
it's
it's
like what you're
incredibly
saying about like
unlikely.
time overlap or
Yeah.
you
Like
know,
there's so much that we don't know that
something
I
like
hope
that.
that somebody proves me wrong. But yeah, so that was my ghost story. In quotes.
I loved it.
Ghost story. All right, so what are you going to ruin our day with next week?
I'm going to be talking about human design, which
that sounds
is,
wonderful.
It's like sort of like a birth chart, but it's not planetary.
Am I going to be able to change my life?
Yeah, you're going to be a better person. You're going to be able to manifest your destiny.
Manifest that ass that I've always wanted. That like ass that doesn't concave.
You got a cute butt.
I think like you have the optical illusion that like when you look at my butt, like it's a normal butt, but it's like your brain
it's
is
just my brain
it.
correcting what I see.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We have been I Read a Thing. We are now online. We are at ireadathing.com, how apropos, and we are on all the streaming platforms. So we better not fuck this up.
I know, right? I'm nervous now.
It's only a matter of time before I do something uncomfortable.
Get ready for the hate mail.
Hell yeah! ireadathingpodcast@gmail.com. Send us all your hate mail and your weird ghost stories. All right, guys. See you next time.
Bye.